I wanted to ask you, what happened in the 7 years and 10 months behind the walls of your old flat that took you from strength coach to life coach?
The thing that put me in behind that door in the initial place was
The thing I always thought of as well is like, we're only in control. We're not in control of what happens to us. We're not in control of everyone else's emotions. We're only in control through how we perceive things that go around us. How do we perceive this terrain?
whose responsibility is it to give the therapist the tools? The therapist. If you care about helping people, take it upon yourself to fucking learn.
Whether you agree with it or not, the question should be, why are so many young men resonating? What is there a lack of in society that make people go to him?
I would just want more men to just understand, if you've got a problem, seek the solution. If you view life the same now in your mid-30s as you did when you were in your mid-20s, you're not living life right, because you're not evolving. You're not challenging yourself enough. All your belief systems are staying the same.
Andrew, so I've had a few people on here that delved into the world of mental health, whether it's life coaching, psychology. And before we talk about some of the topics we talked about today, I know that every single person I've spoken to that's got into this field got into this for a reason, right? So I wanted to ask you, what happened in the 7 years and 10 months behind the walls of your old flat that took you from strength coach to life coach?
The thing that put me in behind that door in the initial place was leaving my ex-wife, which was, I'd say, is probably one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make. Not because of her, but purely because of the kids. That is, situations like that is where I felt there was a little bit of a curse of knowledge, knowing the statistical outcomes of children that grow up in single parent homes in comparison to children that grow up in like a complete homes, you know, so to speak, and things like that. But it just got to a point where I was just like, this can't be life. This can't be all life is going to be, you know? So anyway, the divorce, and then it was just the subsequent series of events that I went through, you know, going through hardships, being broke, being in debt at the same time, which is a fucking fantastic combination. You know, having a lot more money needing to go out than I had coming in, whilst having 3 kids that I was looking after half the week. That was, I mean, those 7 years and 10 months, or better part of 8 years, was incredibly formative for me. So that started in 2014. My personal development journey is like me becoming a better version of myself started back in 2010. And that was because of a series of events that happened in my life where I was like, I need to get fucking control of myself. I can't be this guy anymore. I can't be this version of me that doesn't have control over, you know, like who and what I can be. Being unnecessarily violent in situations that it really wasn't, it could have had dire outcomes. And I suppose that's it. It's just the formative experience of that, and just I suppose a personal obsession with improving and refusing to accept things as they are. Because again, I wasn't happy with life whilst I was married, and then when I left, I really wasn't happy from a different reason. And that's when things like personal responsibility and things really came into focus. And I was just like, this is mine. I need to own it. I need to fix all of these problems that exist in my life.
There's 2 things here that I think, you know, it in that you said in that story that strike why you have some a different sort of mindset to a lot of people that would have gone through similar situations. And the first one, like, probably what most people don't talk about, and obviously I don't need to go into the details of your ex marriage, but like, that must have been a very brave thing to do, especially knowing, you know, the stats with single parent households and the things that are worrying you. Like, what do you think has given you the bravery to take action on things not being right? Because there's a lot of people that have things, whether it's a career, a job, a partner, that they don't feel, they had that same feeling that this can't be it, but comfort or fear stops them taking action. Like, what is it, things that has made you be able to almost be able to see that bigger picture and take calculated risks more?
For me, when you use the word brave, that isn't a word that I've ever associated with any of the things that I've done, because I don't understand why that is a brave thing to do. To me, it just makes sense. I mean, this is where the analytical side of me really comes out, because I had my life situation as it was. There were some good points. There was an overwhelming stack of bad points. The pros and cons, so to speak, was heavily in favor of the cons. Do I want to live like this for the rest of my life? No. Are there any signs that it's going to improve in spite of all of my best efforts to improve it? No. So there is no other option. It was a case of I either commit to this life and just live miserable forever, or I take the necessary steps to put myself in the best possible position of having a much happier life, as well as what would eventually be a better life for the kids. So I did the thing that made the most logical sense to me. It didn't make sense to stay in that situation. And that's the mechanism that I take people through, that I work with. Because as emotional as people might want to be, and as much as people like to talk about emotional intelligence, most people don't have it, male or female. Because for me, actual emotional intelligence is being able to be in an emotionally fueled environment and still be able to remain pragmatic, be rational, to rationalize a disturbing situation, a traumatic situation, however you want to phrase it, to be able to take a step back and go, right, hang on, what's going on? That is emotional intelligence. Anybody that is choosing to stay in an awful situation in which they know they are miserable and there is no signs of change, they can't speak of emotional intelligence, because that isn't it. Being able to endure a negative situation because you're scared of what might come after it, that isn't brave to me. In the same way that taking the step out of an unchanging, awful situation that makes you miserable to step into one that has great potential to make you happier also isn't brave. It just makes fucking sense.
Yeah. So like
it just makes sense to me.
So, like, if someone came to you with that similar thing, and maybe they didn't have that emotional intelligence in that same way, is you mentioned like a pros and cons list? Is zooming out and being able to go, right, life is short. Do you want to live this way forever? Let's weigh up the pros. What's the worst case scenario? Is this how you start to coach someone through making these big decisions to the point where it makes sense for them in the same way that made sense for you?
Yes. Because so Einstein used to he would explain the dimensions of time with a very, very simple analogy. So he stated that if we saw life in the second dimension, that would be like being stood behind a parade, and all you can see is that back wall of the parade. So that's the only part of the whole parade that is perceivable to you is what's immediately in front of you. We view life in the third dimension, and that's the equivalency of being in the middle of the parade. So everywhere you look, the parade is happening around you, and you can perceive everything that's happening around you. And if we could view time, life, in the fourth dimension, that would be the equivalency of viewing the parade from the top of a very, very, very tall building, because you could see the start of the parade, you could see the end of the parade, and everything that happened in the middle. So that would be the ability for us to conceptualize all of time in an instant. So my approach to emotion is to stand on top of the building. So if you continue to try to manage your emotions whilst being stood in the middle of the parade, you can't, because you can't objectively look at the path that you've traveled and everything that's happened before that's led you to this situation. There's so much going on around you, you can't think straight. And you don't know what is going to happen in the future because you can't see it. You can't see the route, you can't see the people that are leading the charge, so to speak, leading the parade. So if you do zoom out and you are more objective, then it gives you the ability to look at each individual stepping stone that you've taken that's got you to the middle of the parade, where you are in life right now. And that gives you the ability to go, right, if I carry on the path that I am on now, I'm most likely going to end up there. Do I want to? It's yes or no. And if the answer is no, taking this approach gives you the opportunity to either stay where you are and allow the rest of the parade to move around you whilst you collect your thoughts and take some time, or to step out of the parade. You don't need to be part of every situation that happens in your life. And for me, giving people the capacity to understand that it's a situation that they are not central to, you can remove yourself from it and allow the parade to carry on, and it doesn't need to continue affecting you.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. And the thing I always thought of as well is like, we're only in control. We're not in control of what happens to us. We're not in control of everyone else's emotions. We're only in control to how we perceive things that go around us. How do we perceive this parade? We'll still be standing there when the parade route has gone past. And I was like starting to think of like, in certain big things that are going on in my life, which we've spoken about on Instagram a little bit. I could look at those two paths that I've got on zooming out, and path A, I am definitely going to end up here. Path B, it could get worse, it could get better. But if I look back and zoom out and I look at the parade from that top of that tall building, and I look at 40, 50 years time, looking back on Simon today, am I going to be happy with taking action rather than letting the world take it for me? And I think being able to zoom out, even if you're uncertain, even if just looking at the path from the tall building doesn't give you an answer because you don't know the parade route, at least you can go, I can zoom out and go, what was the thing I'll be proud of myself for doing today? And if it goes right, if it goes wrong, it doesn't matter. At least then I can hold myself with a bit of pride.
Yeah, and the fact that you actually did it. So it's like, with that, acceptance is, it's a huge part of life for many different reasons and many different situations. So for me, when I'd moved into that apartment and life was what it was at that moment, I accepted life as it was. I accepted all of my circumstances as they were. And then from that moment, refused to accept them staying the same. Which is why I was just like, any step that is necessary to take to change things to the way that I want them to be, I am now going to take. I sacrificed sleep for years and years on end because I was in a position where I was just like, right, I'm in debt and I'm broke. I don't have the privilege to sleep 8 hours a night. To be honest, I thought it was fucking absurd to want to sleep 8 hours a night. And living the way that I did gave me the opportunity to make sure that I could be there for the kids as much as possible whilst they were with me, because I didn't want their memories of me whilst they were growing up to be daddy works all the time. So I would, if I picked them up from school, when we got home, I would be there with them until they went to bed. And at that time, they were that much younger. They were going to bed at like 8 o'clock. So then once they were down 8, 8:30, I would then work from then until whatever time I needed to work to get done what needed to be done. And then I would sleep, and then I would get up early enough so that I could get a couple of hours work done before they got up for school. Now, I maintained that same schedule all the way through to them getting older and older and them going to bed later and later. So it got to a point where sometimes they'd be going to bed at like 9, 9:30, sometimes 10 o'clock, and then I would start work. I would work until 2, go to sleep, get up at just before 6 and work from 6 until 7, and then I'd get them up for the school run. Because that was just the way. Being pragmatic is how you overcome your problems. What I felt about my circumstances was largely irrelevant. It didn't really matter.
Were you self-employed as a coach at this time?
Yes.
So the question I have about that, like, because you must work with, because of your background, you must work with a lot of coaches that are struggling with various things. And the problem with being self-employed is that I could listen to this podcast and I can go, right, imagine I had kids. I'm going to wait till they go to bed and I'm going to work until 2 a.m. because I'm also broke and I'm also in debt. And I open up my laptop and I'm like, I know where I need to go. I know the destination. I have no idea the next step. You must see so many coaches that I feel like they're just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping stuff sticks. What would you give advice to that coach? Or how did you be able to be able to cut through the fluff and be laser focused on, or work out what those non-negotiables were? Or did you just throw shit at the wall for long enough until something stuck?
No, I've never been able to approach anything with the throw enough shit at the wall and eventually something will stick. I've always had to actually approach something with a genuine purpose, because if I'm just throwing anything at the wall, I can't measure data off that. There's no real statistical feedback that's going to come back from it. So if I've got a specific approach for the way that I would work with a client, but then I'm changing it all the time, after 12 months and using 10 different approaches, I can't look back at the results that my clients have got through that time and go, that specific approach and that specific approach worked far better. Whereas if I'd done those two approaches, only one for 6 months and the next for 6 months, I would at least have some kind of measurable results. So I've never done random. I don't do random. Everything's got to be targeted, because the more random your approach, the less effort ultimately you can put into it. Because when people do that, they think, oh, I'm working really hard. I'm like, well, how hard can you be working? Say, like, break it down for, if there's a lot of online coaches that are in fitness listening to this, break it down in easy terms for them. Say you get somebody performing a new exercise. They can't attack that movement with maximum intensity until they've mastered the movement. And realistically, even if they're performing that movement twice a week, they're not going to master it for a minimum of 8 to 12 weeks. Which means that if you remove that exercise from their program before that time, they can't get the most from that movement. And the same thing goes for their entire program. And that works across the board. If you've got a specific approach for advertising, for marketing, for controlling your finances, for outreach, for content production, etc., if you're changing it all the time, you can't A, master any of the techniques, and B, you've not done any of them for long enough to get reasonable numbers of feedback and data to prove which one works best for you and why. So don't do random.
So you mentioned there, like, your feelings about your circumstances were relatively irrelevant. And we see so many people will either go into victim mode, or they put the whole self-worth in their business or their relationship or all the things that are going wrong. And I get this impression that you've always been a relatively resilient person. Like, that makes sense to you to, like, not give up. When people lean into drugs and alcohol, or heck, even work addictions to distract, what do you feel has made you resilient? And if someone is hiding from stuff, or like, how do you get them to be able to take stock and be able to take personal responsibility?
But the only thing that builds resilience is actually going through and experiencing whatever you're experiencing. So if you try to cope, if you use a coping mechanism, you are automatically avoiding resilience. You can't develop something that you don't need and you don't experience. Even from the most basic of terms, at the moment, the weather's lovely and it's really hot. Now, the first couple of days that it got hot, we were all melting. At the moment, I'm not sure what the temperature is. I think it's about 24, 25, something like that. This time last week, when it was 24 degrees, we were all incredibly uncomfortable. It's now a week later. Because we haven't had a choice, we haven't been able to escape the heat. And we're all acclimating to it. We've all adapted. Now, does that mean that we're more resilient? Technically, yes. We are now slightly more resilient to our environment. Now, if you've got a life situation, whether it's financial, whether it's work pressures, whether it's relationship, it doesn't matter what it is. If you've got an environment at the moment that is causing you pain, the best thing that you can do is allow yourself to be in it, be cognizant of it, and accept it, because that's how you become resilient enough so that you can then, even more so, step back from the emotion of it, observe it the way that you need to, so that you can make constructive decisions. You can make intelligent, informed decisions instead of reacting to things emotionally. If you constantly try to avoid it, you're never going to build any kind of resilience and put yourself in a position where you can mentally deal with it.
Yeah. So zooming out a little bit, and maybe taking this sort of like top of the building perspective onto sort of like the main topic of today. Do you think as a society we are doing enough for men's mental health right now?
No, not at all. And Labour specifically have now just proven even more so that it's really not a priority, even now. Because part of the litany of things that they claim that they're going to do, prior to the election being called, they said that men's male advocacy, like speaking for men, making sure that men get things that they need, was going to be part of it. and it's not. There's 3 separate things that have been added into it that are specific to women's health, women with regards to violence and things like that, which are great. And I don't disagree with those being in it at all, but there's nothing for men. And it's just not cared about on the scale that it needs to be.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is that when we see problems in women's mental health, there are policies to change society? When men have problems, it's directed inwards. It's they need to talk. Because we had a back and forth on a comment section recently about, and I agree with you in the sense that men do need to talk. They do need to be more resilient and take that personal responsibility. We have no argument here. But it's all men's mental health is focused on the individual. It's your fault. If you get ill, it's you don't go to the doctor enough. If you're struggling, it's your responsibility to talk. You're not talking enough. Rather than, right, we have a problem here. What can we do as society to solve this? Why do you think this is not fair both ways?
To be honest, I don't know. I mean, what you just said then is that it's right in the middle of it. Because if women experience a problem, it's external to them. They are not the cause of the problem that they experience. They are always victim of the circumstances. It's always a societal issue that society overall needs to change. And more often than not, all of the problems that women experience that are external to them are spearheaded by men. Therefore, the element of society that needs to change to solve those problems is men. The exact opposite is the case with men's issues. It's always, like you said, it's internal. The issue is being caused by men. It's being perpetuated by men. It's, well, if a man has a problem, he's doing something wrong, and he needs to change what he's doing. And the funniest thing is that in a society where the notion of victim blaming is so prevalent, that never gets spoken of when it comes to men's mental health. And there's too much. I mean, obviously, male advocacy is something that I'm big on because I run the male support network that is specific to men's mental health and skill acquisition and, like developing a community for men to come to. I will speak out on certain topics and posts that I see on social media. And the amount of times that I will post an articulate, well thought out reply to something that's been said and it gets met with, well, men need to stop being so insecure. Or I get called an incel. I get called misogynistic, and I've not said anything against women in any way, shape, or form. I haven't even mentioned women in my entire passage, and I still get called a misogynist purely because I focus on and support men. So misogyny is now being so diluted by women that use it that don't even understand what it is, that the term of it is beginning to change. The meaning of it is being molded into something completely different.
Do you think that mentality and that abuse? It's the obvious answer in terms of yes, of course it does, but because I can totally relate to that. Like I remember after the Sarah Everard case, which is obviously tragic, right? And this started the not all men trend. And I did a video of basically saying, look, this is a terrible thing, and we all the good men, all the men that have nothing to do with this horrible person, need to stand up and make sure women feel safe and protected. And I got more abuse from women for posting it than I did support from men for posting it. Yeah, but if men feel that they're going to get set upon, they won't help again. And now we're creating this divide even more where women become more angry because the men in their life aren't supporting them because they're scared to do so. Like, is the only way to change that for women to be nicer online? Or can men do something to take ownership of that?
Why should men take ownership for it? That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, because that right there shows how inherent and bred into us this belief system of, well, if a man experiences a problem, if there's something that a man doesn't like, then he needs to fucking fix it. That is being perpetuated by women. That is, there's so much misandry that I see online on a daily basis, and it does, the comments don't get pulled down, they don't go against community guidelines, etc. Whereas if you do say something that can be even perceived as misogynistic, it is removed almost immediately. And that's an inherent issue. As soon as you mentioned Sarah Everhard, I knew what you were going to say because I had a lot of the similar issue at that time. Like I've got a lot of close female friends, more so than male friends. And I had the conversation with a couple of them because they were consuming the content that they were seeing online and they were just going along with the narrative and they were just accepting it as gospel because, oh, well, this woman has said this and blah, blah, and there's a couple of, notorious female feminists / misandrists, ones that I think they do overstep the line. And they were sharing their content openly on their stories. So I challenged a couple of them. And I was just like, do you truly believe that? That it was when the curfew came up, which to me was the most absurd thing that has come around for a long, 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 long time. I was like, you do realize that the men that do go out and are violent against women and do commit sexual assaults, etc., they don't care about the law. They already know that those things are illegal and they do them anyway. I said, so all you would be doing is getting rid of the actual good men, the law-abiding men. And I used the example with one of my female friends. I said, okay, you're walking down the street. I said, and you can hear footsteps behind you. I said, and with the weight of the steps that are landing, you know it's a male. I said, it's late at night. You're on your own. There's nobody else on the street with you. I said, and you're walking along and it sounds like the footsteps are getting closer, which means that the gap between you and him is closing. And whilst I was painting the picture, her heart started to pound. And she was just like, I'm literally feeling the fear of it now. I was just like, right. I said, now imagine I or somebody built like me comes around the corner and starts walking towards you. How do you feel immediately? She was just like, I'd feel safe. And I was like, right, why? I was like, because if the not all men isn't relevant now and it shouldn't be said, I said, see me come around the corner, shouldn't your fear 10 times? Shouldn't it just explode and think, oh my God, the absolute worst is going to happen now because there's two of them? I was like, but it doesn't. I said, you see me and you feel safer. I said, because you know that guy, if any type of man that is going to attack a woman are fucking cowards. I was like, always cowards. He would see me and think, I'm not risking having to go hand to hand with him. I said, even the thought of us passing and you taking a corner and him following you, he grabs you and you scream and I hear it, he knows that the chances are I'm going to come back around the corner and he's going to have to deal with me or whoever it was, a male at that time. I said, and they won't risk it. I said, so removing all men from the street isn't going to work because it won't remove all men from the street. It will only remove the men that could put you in a position of protection. I was like, it's an absurd just prospect. It's completely absurd. And she was just like, that actually makes sense. And I was just like, not only that, and this is something that came up again recently with the whole man v bear thing. I said 76% of the time, the man that attacks these women, they know him. And more often than not, it happens inside their home. I was like, yes, there are times when it is a stranger and it is on the street. I was like, there's no circumstance, there's no scenario, there's no iteration of who it is and how well they know them or where it happens, that it's not absolutely awful. But again, you've got to be logical with these situations. I think most of the time it's somebody that you know.
And not to cut you off there, but like not only is that's always terrible, but we also hear about the strangers more. I'm not justifying it as not what newsworthy, but if someone is a stranger doing this to someone, we hear it all over the news. It's plastered to the point where we don't think this is the minority anymore. We think this is a genuine danger, which most people aren't in. They're more likely to be hurt, as you say, by a partner or a male person in the family. But we view these things, and Sarah Everard got worldwide press that now puts that sense of fear into us that may not have been there before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's it. There is a huge fear culture around it. There is the media very responsible for perpetuating fear and irrational, completely disproportionate fear of men. Like I understand the fear that women have got. I've got a female friend who unfortunately has experienced the worst that can happen in that respect. And I have a daughter. If anybody ever touched my daughter and I knew it was, I'd dig the fucking eyes out of the skull. You know, it's like it's categorically one of the worst things that can happen. But creating a fear of all men doesn't solve anything. It creates a bigger divide, because to position all men as potential predators and perpetrators, not only perpetrators but supporters of it, which the Man v Bear thing has very much done, is the worst thing that you can do, because if you want somebody to become an ally, you can't attack them. You can't attack them and then go, why do you not support me? Like, well, am I a predator or not? Like, do you want me to be an ally and accept me as somebody that would never in a million years do that? Or is it purely because I am a man that I am a predator? And if I'm not now, then it's just because I haven't had the right opportunity, which is what one woman said to me on Instagram.
Oh my days.
That was actually her like proposition. It was, not, you haven't yet. I was like, what is that supposed to mean? She was like, you just haven't had the right opportunity. I was like, where do you even go when you're trying to converse with someone that is that absurd? There is nowhere to go. You can't speak to some people that are like that.
And that the scary thing about that is like how far this has gone. Like I got this a lot when Andrew Tate went to prison, right? And again, I'm not aware of where this has gone and where things are, but initially they were trying to find evidence. At this moment, I'm very much, all I was saying at the early stages of this is like, look, love or hate Andrew Tate for his message, he is innocent until proven guilty, right? For you to have your pitchforks out as soon as you went in because you want him to be guilty is almost like saying you want women to be trafficked. I would rather him be innocent, because it means that no one's been hurt. And I was labeled misogynistic for not putting a potentially innocent man behind bars. I'm like, at what point does this anti-men rhetoric subsede the legal system of fairness? And I am getting the brunt of this. And that truly scares me, because if and we're seeing this in dating statistics now, men are not wanting to ask women out because they are worried that they're going to be accused of something and they're going to get the book thrown at them, and I was scared enough as a teenager to speak to women. I don't even know what it would be like now.
Yeah, and that, funnily enough, is something that I had almost identical experiences around that whole time. The amount of times that I said to someone, do you want him to be guilty? Yes. I was like, so you want him to have trafficked women? I was like, that's absurd. The fact that you would feel some form of vindication if he and his brother had actually been trafficking women. You actually want those teenage girls to have been through hell. I don't. I want it to be a complete fallacy and for them to be found innocent because there's no evidence to support it, because it didn't happen, which means that no girls were trafficked. That to me seems like the ideal. Yeah. It's like it's a mob mentality though. If you speak out against the current virtue trend, then you get attacked and you get labeled with any wide array of bigotry of what you are. If there is always an adhesion of a label that an individual is never going to want as a result of speaking out against a certain social situation, that is being done to try and shut them down so that they won't say the things. Because the fewer people speak out against something or speak in opposition of something, automatically the more people that are in favor of it. So if they could shut down 50% of the men that would be logical and saying, let's see what the outcome is, I'll make my determination when the jury has, and they shut all of those men down, there's less and less and less people that are being logical. There's less people that are supporting it. And one thing that I did, and it actually got me blocked from the page that it was happening on, because it was like a feminist page, and it popped up on my Explore page just because of the conversations I've been having. And I likened the approach to the whole Andrew Tate thing and shutting people down with what the KKK used to do when times of racism were, it wasn't even seen as a bad thing. It was so normal. And I was just like, the people that spoke in favor of people of color at that time, black people in America or anywhere, was like they were ostracized. They were shunned. They were shut down. They couldn't say the things that they could say. They were almost what we would experience as being deplatformed. Because the thing that was the kind of socially wanted thing was the more accepted. I was like, but anytime you see that through history, the people that were shutting the other side down are always on the wrong side of history. Always. Unless, and this was my, like, the way that I proposed it, I said, unless you would prefer to be on the side of people like the KKK, and you want the perpetuation of a hate towards all men purely because they're meant to continue to proliferate. And then I was blocked. I was like, okay, well, that speaks volumes.
Madness I find with the Andrew Tate thing is that we're such in a judgment society that if someone likes Andrew Tate, we correctly find ways to judge them. If someone's son or boyfriend or husband started following Andrew Tate, the message would be, how can I stop my son watching this guy? Why, like, how do we stop it? How do we block him? What can we do? How do we get rid of Tate? Where, in my opinion, the question is, well, he was the most Googled man in the world. There's a huge amount of people that are resonating with him. So whether you think he's the right role model or not, which I used to think he was, not so much now, whether you agree with it or not, the question should be, why are so many young men resonating? What is there a lack of in society that make people go to him? If we can solve that, then Andrew Tate loses his muster. There are people that are well-meaning, because most Google man on the planet means that not, unless you believe the all men, thing, not all of them are going to be horrible misogynistic pricks, are resonating with this man. So why is that? What is the lack in society that makes this man the most popular person on the planet?
Yeah, and it's probably because so many people resonated with him because he spoke to the people that society didn't care about. And he spoke to them in a manner that showed that he actually wanted better for them. Because, whether people love him, hate him, or anywhere in between, anybody that hasn't just consumed the little edited clips and the tidbits that were shared at that time to position him as a particular character, anybody that's consumed...
Not to cut you off there, but have you ever had someone be anti-Andrew Tate that's listened to a whole interview? Have you ever met someone? Because I haven't.
No. It's always met with, I've seen everything I need to, etc., etc. And I like to say to people, because I've had the conversation with both men and women that held the same belief of him. I said, think about some of the conversations that you've had with friends in private, some of the things that you said, some of the jokes that you've made, the underhanded comments, the dark humor, etc. I was like, now imagine if somebody had recorded all of those different conversations and they found the worst bits of the things that you've said that, once removed from context, sounded even worse, and then edited them together and then posted it online. I was like, how much would people hate you societally? And they were like, well, yeah, but that's different. I was like, no, it isn't. It's not different at all. It's very much the same, because that's what's happening. You will have a clip that lasts 11 seconds taken from a 3-hour podcast episode. And prior to the comment that was made and after, adds context and changes what was being said entirely. Because I can guarantee, I mean, you could even do it. You could do it you could test it. Once we're done here, if you get your editing team to go through and say, try to find a clip of either you or me saying something that, if you remove all context from it, it makes us sound awful. And you could be like, this is how easy it is, but then show the whole clip so that all of the context of the prior and the after, it's all together, completely changes the meaning.
Absolutely. So why do you think Andrew Tate resonated with so many people? You've alluded to that. He spoke to the people that no one is listening to. And I would add to that, it's also giving them a personal responsibility in a way out, where everyone else was blaming them for their misfortune.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, who else did a lot of people have to turn to? Because I love bringing that into the conversation. Oh, why did people turn to him? Who else have they got to turn to? Well, yeah, maybe the people that adhered to Andrew and Tristan didn't want to turn to the LGBTQ community, which is the only thing that you see. Maybe they don't resonate with Disney films where every other character is I don't know, a different gender or a different whatever. Because I don't. I have no issue with people being gender fluid or identify as a fucking bar of soap if you want. I don't give a shit. But that doesn't mean that I want to watch a TV program where everybody that is in the program is like that. And it's getting to the point where everything is becoming like that. To the point where it's become ridiculous, where every individual character in a TV program is a different race. And, one of them is gay, one of them's this, one of them's the other, blah, blah. It's abstract to normal life, because if you think about the social circles that you run in, how many different races exist within that social circle? And within those, that vary of different races, how many of them are transgender? How many of them are gay? How many of them are whatever? Like life doesn't happen like that, except in these communities where people create that kind of environment. And people say, "Oh, representation is important." Absolutely. And again, like if you want programs like that, awesome, but it doesn't need to be laced into every program. And people are getting sick of that, and people need something or someone to turn to. So if you think about it, all the different things that have happened that have caused segregation over the last 10 years or so, that has been the focus. So you had, like, if we take it back to, I don't know, say like the American election. So you had Trump and Clinton. That caused a huge divide of people. So say you've got everybody as a whole, and then you've got people that want Trump and people that want Hillary, and you're now divided into two. Now, within the people that supported Trump, COVID hit, and then you had some people that believed in it entirely and thought it was going to be the next plague, and there were other people that were like, no, I don't think it's going to be that bad. So you've now got a faction of people that's now been split into two. And then of the people that don't believe it's going to be that bad, you had some people that believe that you should wear a mask and others that didn't. So that bubble has now been split as well. And then within the bubble that thinks that you should wear a mask, you had some that thought that you should also get the vaccine and others thought that you didn't. So all of those different bubbles are going and being scattered more and more and more. And as more social issues are being introduced, Ukraine, Palestine and Israel, LGBTQ, everything, in each bubble, regardless of what proportion of people there is in it that have the bias for what that bubble is made for, every different social function, every different social issue split that bubble into more and more fractured factions of people. So to try and find any form of unity at the moment is increasingly difficult. And then you get someone that's got so much strength and so much character and so much purpose and so much conviction, like Andrew and Tristan Tate, that they got other people to forget about the little differences that they had and come together and form a huge community that were focused on one common goal: personal development, earning more money, having higher utility for your family and your friends, which, to be perfectly honest, are really important issues. And they actually created platforms that did more for men's mental health, realistically, than an awful lot of people. And people go, that's awful. Right, but everybody else that hasn't put any effort or time, every government, every individual that is against them, that doesn't like the fact that they've got their platform and the community that they've developed, every single one of those people are in their own way responsible for that happening, because you haven't done anything to create an alternative.
Like, there's so much to unpack in that, and I think I'll start with the Disney thing. I think I'm all for diversity in any movie that you want to, but it's not having a lazy, what I think is actually more racist and more sexist version of diversity. It's like the people that want to claim we need a black or a female James Bond, right? Now, like, if James Bond had been black since the 1960s, I would be protesting for don't have a white James Bond. It's forcefully changing someone's ethnicity or gender or sexual identity to tick a quota, which I actually think is more sexist, because, like, look, you can't make your own franchise successful, so don't worry, we'll just give you ours, rather than building a strong female character that owns her own franchise, or a strong black character. This is what Marvel did very well, because we had these characters already given to us and they held their own movies. We had our Black Panthers, we had our Black Widows, but now we're going to go, right, we have She-Hulk complaining that she has like a much harder time in life because she's wolf whistled, rather than Bruce Banner had family abuse. We'll change the ethnicity of things just to fill a quota. And I'm like, actually, is this doing any favors for anyone? Or is this just virtual signaling? It's like Disney will have a pride flag on every logo except in Saudi Arabia, which means they don't really care. And I think this is a lot of the problem with this stuff, is that we can complain whether some of these things have gone too far or not. But the problem is that most of the people pushing it don't actually care about it. It's a narrative.
Yeah, most of them don't want it because they know people that are actually in it and actually live that life, and their place within those communities isn't performative. They don't want it to be the way that it is right now, because they know that people get sick of it and it causes more problems. It causes more segregation. But that's the point. It's like it's being done on purpose to push it to cause more issues. I've got gay friends. I have absolutely no fucking issue with someone, regardless of what your sexuality is. I couldn't give a shit. I really couldn't. If you're a nice person and I think you're cool, I'll sit and talk to you, and I will sit and talk to you about whatever you want to talk about. But it's like when Black Panther came along, and there were always white liberals. Oh, finally we've got a black superhero. What about Blade? I'm pretty sure Wesley Snipes is black, and that's Marvel, and that was one of the first adaptations that was ever made, and people fucking loved it. So that's why it got a trilogy, and it was absolutely incredible. And that is a role that I think they're rebooting it, but to be perfectly honest, I don't want them to. Wesley Snipes is Blade. It is his thing, just like Hugh Jackman is Wolverine. But people don't want to see that. It's that what is it? The DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, or something like that.
Do you think people like to have something to complain about, though? Because you get the same thing. I'm a big James Bond fan, as if you probably already worked out by mentioning it twice. But people always talk about James Bond girls being treated unfairly. Like they're always these, they want to make it out that this is always these weak bimbos that need saving, and it's one of the worst movies for strong females. I'm like, Ursula Andress, Pussy Galore. I know the names are fucking terrible, but other than that, if we look through the Bond movies, they've all been strong spy people. There's been the odd one that's been a complete bimbo, but I think since the 60s, they were doing strong female characters before strong female characters were cool. And who's the demographic we're arguing for? It's like I used to get arguments with the Barbie movie when I gave a fair point to why I thought it was very misogynistic. Sorry, not misogynistic, very anti-men. People said to me, "Well, don't go to it. It's not your movie." I'm like, okay, then don't go to a James Bond movie and complain about how the women are being represented.
Yeah, because so some of the women are just bimbos. Some women are bimbos. That it's true to life. I've met women that they're fucking empty heads. They're beautiful and nothing else. They have no substance. It's just the way it is. It's a part of life. It doesn't mean that she's useless or worthless or whatever. It just means that that's who and how she is. For me, false representation is as bad as no representation, because if all of a sudden all young girls, the only type of female character that they ever see in every program is this big, strong, independent woman that everybody turns to in a crisis, etc., isn't that just as bad as if every woman actually was a bimbo and only cared about the looks?
Well, we're seeing this now.
I don't want my daughter.
We've seen this now with less people having kids, and the people that do want to be stay-at-home mums, which is if you want to be a CEO boss bitch, go for it. If you want to be a stay-at-home mum, go for it. But we're seeing women getting slammed and going against the cause for wanting to stay at home with their family and being the best mum. We're seeing the downside of that.
Yeah, I can't remember his name, but the American football player, the quarterback, I think he is. that gave that keynote speech. No, he gave the commencement address at school, in which he was talking about the way society is at the moment. It's pulling all women to want careers and to be high-powered women and earn lots of money and be independent and, you know, like just focus on the career and be career-driven. And he was saying, like, that essentially isn't the way that you need to live your life. Like, you know, having a family, having children, being a great wife and, you know, like caring for your family, etc. It's a great way to live. And people lost their minds. And there was loads of pages all over Instagram, different social media platforms, women that were absolutely going in on him. And it's like, he's a devout Catholic who was given a commencement address to Catholic students at a Catholic university that live their life by Catholic ideals. And apparently, because he's a man, he's not allowed to speak to women and tell women that it's okay to want what they want. And from professional experience, I've worked with women that just want to be a mother. They just want to be a wife. They just want to look after a husband. They just want to be what their mum was in their life or what their grandma was to their granddad. And they genuinely feel like they can't. They get spoken down to. And the most ironic thing is, when this came up with one of my clients, said to her, have you not found that the people that at the moment that actually tell you and try to dictate how you can and or should live your life right now is other women, not men? The most oppression that women experience right now is at the hands of other women, not men. You know, if I saw a meme a couple of days ago, and it was a tweet from a girl, and she said, men have the privilege of never knowing what it feels like to not be able to wear the same thing to an event twice. And then a guy had replied and said, that was started and is perpetuated by women. Men don't give a shit if you wear the same thing every time. Women do. And it's true. You know, the societal standards, so to speak, and expectations that are levied against women that men genuinely do not care about. Mm-hmm. If one of my female friends went to an event and she had a nice dress on, and then she went to another event and had the same dress on, I'd see it and go, it makes sense because you look really nice in that dress. Or whereas some women, I'm not going to be like most people these days and just go, whereas women would say, because not all women would say it, some would, they would go, oh my God, I can't believe she's wearing the same dress twice. Like, so what? She wears it fucking 6 or 7 times. Who cares? Get your money's worth out of it. Like, for starters, like, yeah, wear it multiple times. Like, do what you want. It doesn't make any difference. But that's one of the issues at the moment. Because the accountability for that, again, is something that a lot of women, certainly that I come across on social media, refuse to accept. They refuse to accept the accountability for the role that they play in the issues that women experience and for the issues that men experience.
I think it goes both ways as well, though, right? I think if the aim is equality, right, which is supposedly the aim, right, we should see people held to the same standards. No one is complaining that there's not enough female bin men, right? They're only complaining there's not enough female corporate executives and lawyers. We absolutely bastardize men for any wolf whistling lad locker room talk, right? And rightly so. But I have spent a lot of time with female friendship groups and male friendship groups. And I would say that men don't really talk about their sex life. No, I've not met many men that talk about their wife's private parts or what their sex life's like. I've known women talk about men's anatomy. I've known women gossip about their partners. No one criticizes, and it's again not all women, bitchiness. I had this the other day where I had somebody female poke fun at my divorce publicly on Instagram, trying to shame me. And I'm like, maybe I would, but I don't think I'll ever hear a story of a man doing that to somebody.
I have no doubt it happens. It absolutely will happen. It's just less prevalent.
And I think both should have the same repercussions, but that, like, one gets away with something the other one doesn't.
I think one thing that most people miss on situations like this, Simon, is the fact that it's the removal of autonomy and freedom that causes the biggest issues for people. Because for me, I think people should be able to say what they want, when they want, wherever they are, all the time, because it lets us know who people are. If you make it so that you can't post racist comments online and they always get taken down, it doesn't stop people being racist. It just stops people posting about it. But the person that would have posted it is still racist. It's just that they're now kind of protected by community guidelines. Like, I would much rather see somebody that I know being able to post their true thoughts and feelings on a type of person or a demographic of society, because that would help me be able to get a look behind the curtain so I could see what sort of person they are, and then I could use that to make my decision of whether I'm going to continue to align myself with them. Because a lot of the issue that I see at the moment, certainly around issues like sexual assault, rape, etc., is women saying men need to hold their friends to a higher standard. You need to call your men out. I don't know what women think we talk about, but at no point has any male that I've ever known ever got into a group of us and gone, "Oh, fucking sexually assaulted this girl last night. I was doing this and blah blah." And we've all gone, "Oh, fucking high five, nice one, mate." The only, but one thing that I will say that I have experienced is when a friend has been drunk on a night out and was being over the top with the way that he was trying to come onto a girl. And before I could get to him to stop him, somebody else grabbed him by the back of his neck and dragged him away. And it wasn't like a, mate, come on, leave her alone. It was a pinned against the wall, like, you fucking going home or you getting filled in. Because when men see it, we do call it out. It's not a boys' club. There's nothing funny about sexual assault. There's nothing okay about rape. And I don't know any men that would in any way, shape, or form condone it if they knew about it. At all. It's this weird social perception that's being given of men in general, total, that if you don't do it yourself, you support people that do, or you don't call it out. And again, this is another one of those things where you can just immediately draw a parallel. I'll say, right, so if it's the responsibility of all men to hold other men accountable and to prevent them doing those things, fine. But all women that weaponize their children and purposely lie when they're going through the divorce proceedings and going through custody proceedings so that they can drain money out of the father of the children, that is the responsibility of all women everywhere to stop them from doing it. And when I've said that, it's literally like lighting a stick of dynamite and throwing it into a huge stick of dynamite, because they rage at you. I've experienced rageful, hateful comments back at me for me saying, hold your friends accountable, because I can guarantee that a lot of you do actively know when your friends are cheating on the partners, having an affair, when they're purposely lying about situations, lying about being sexually assaulted, etc., and you say nothing, and they went mental, absolutely mental.
Or even champion it because it's another man that's gets his comeuppance. And it, and even closer to home, right? Like, going to a personal experience here, and maybe this is a difference in, this is maybe a slight thing in men's problems as well, that we don't consider certain things sexual assault in the same way, because we would look at things like, like, oh, well, that's good that happened to me, sort of thing. But I used to work when I was really broke, starting my career as a PT. I used to do 6 o'clock in the morning to about 8 p.m. at night in Virgin Active. Then I used to be outside a nightclub in Birmingham handing out flyers. And on the weekends, I used to go and be a butler at Hendu's. So you know the type of butler I'm talking about here, right? Like, out my arse out and things like this. And I went to this event in Denbigh, Wales, in this stately home in the middle of nowhere with 29 Scousers. Fucking scary. I had one woman broke a prawn cracker in my ass, had another one bite me on the ass. And like, if I bit a woman on the ass,
That's sexual assault.
that's sexual assault. And maybe I don't view it in that same way. I didn't feel as unsafe, maybe, but that wouldn't, I would, if I went to the police for that, maybe not the police so much, but if I went to a group of people and said about that, and when I've gotten laughs. And it's just this level of standard. And I think going back to the Andrew Tate thing, I think this is where social media has become really, really bad, is that I agree with you that we should be allowed to post pretty much everything, because it shows you that people are three-dimensional. They're multifactorial. If I look at, You was if you watched the TV show You on Netflix with the guy who played Dan in Gossip Girl?
I watched the first 2 series, yeah.
So the first series is really interesting, right? So many women fancied him, despite him being the serial killer. I thought it was a really interesting psychological experiment, because what did it show? Why did women fancy him? Because he was the most three-dimensional character in a world of one-dimensional box ticking. We had a guy who adamantly, too far, loved a woman, was murdering people, but also to Paco, was it Paco, the little kid? And he was like the savior to that person. And to me, and this is the clip. You know, you asked earlier on if this is the clip that will get cut out, that will make me cancelable. This is it. Everybody in the world is good and bad, and there are shades of grey. No one is truly evil. I think, and here it comes, I think there was somebody in the early 1920s and 30s that thinks Adolf Hitler was the greatest thing that ever happened to them, and he was the kindest man on the planet. But that person probably isn't Jewish. So when we look at this, it's like someone could be evil in one way and great in another. And if it's criminal, go like fine. But people are complex. People have private things. People have things they're not proud of. People have things they're very proud of. And when we start judging people on an Instagram clip, I'll make the whole identity around this one thing. Like people saying, I have heard enough about Joe Rogan or Andrew Tate or Russell Brand. I'm like, when you watch hours of someone's content, you see good and bad in everybody. And I think people should be looking at things as a whole rather than demonizing people on a trait.
Yeah, because like, you know, Andrew Tate is very much the perfect example of this, because I followed him. I've been aware of Andrew and Tristan Tate from before their blow up. Not wildly before, not like years and years, but before their blow up, I was aware of who they were. And there's loads that they've shared that is spot on advice for how to approach certain things and how to deal with finances, etc. Like on a real level, because again, most people about finances, they talk about buying £1 million cars and things like. It's like, yeah, but that's because you've only seen little clips. You've not seen when they talk to somebody that's only earning £15,000 a year. Sorry, you know, and they're giving them actual pragmatic advice on how to spend their time, on what to not spend their time on, telling them ignore women. Give no woman your time, because right now the only thing that you need to focus on is developing yourself as a man, becoming a man that you can actually be proud of. You know, learn skills. You know, learn how to communicate properly, learn how to speak, become more eloquent, understand finances. You know, learn a martial art, just essentially become a better man. People never see that. You know, it's there's a lot of good that they said, but then I've seen other things that they said, and I've just gone, fucking hell. Yeah. I mean, in some of it, it's performative. And once you've seen enough of them, you can tell with the mannerisms and the kind of smile that he gets on his face. When he's saying something, in his head he's thinking, this is going to piss people off. Yeah. And I know it is. Some of it's performative. Some of it is just said something. And I'm like, oh shit, he meant that. No, Andrew, stop it. You know, so like you can agree with some things and you can disagree with other things. But like the fact that you brought that up, it's a brilliant point, because I've helped people from every different walk of life, every different race, straight people, gay people, lesbian, whatever, right? People that have been wealthy, people that haven't been wealthy, people that have come from a great background, people that have come from absolutely awful starting points. And I've helped them with any of the different life things that you can experience, whether it's mental health, whether it's finances, developing a business, whether it's been divorce, parenting, you name it, right? And I've had conversations, not even conversations, because you can't really call it that when it's in the comment section and social media, but a back and forth, a form of discourse with someone on a particular topic where I and the other person have disagreed. and then they see that I'm a life coach and they go, oh my God, I can't believe you're a life coach. Can't believe that you're responsible for, and I'm like, because there is a misalignment on this one topic, they think you should never be able to help anyone ever with anything. And I'm like, that is the rankest form of narcissism that you will see in people, because they believe so highly of themselves that they think if somebody disagrees with me at all on any of the situations that I feel strongly about, they're just an awful person, categorically. Like there's no gray. There's no possibility or openness to go in, all right, well, we disagree on this, but we might completely align on something else. Yeah, and it's bizarre. It's completely bizarre, and it feels like it's a much more recent development.
It's the thing. Like at the moment, I think that people are more combative, and I think it's a boring life if you chat to people you only agree with. I actively look for people I disagree with and I can have healthy discussion because the conversation more fun, and I can find devil's advocate. This is why I hate the Instagram reaction video trend on the fitness industry. I hate it with a massive passion. I've seen people now that started off in the right place, calling out people for being dickheads about stuff, and that's fine. I won't name necessarily the guy, but let's call him Spanish Scottish fitness, and he started reacting to somebody like James Smith taking the piss out of an autistic kid. Right, you got fair game, but then I see it morph into I need the next thing that gives me social clout. And they start knocking down newer coaches. And I'm like, you now got people that are scared to speak their opinion. Like that could have gone in a DM. That could have been like, let's say, can I help you out? But people now, if you don't agree with them, it's not a discussion. It's a public shaming. And I was like, we've lost this ability to communicate and have nuance. And this is why I love the rise of podcasting, because even if it gets clipped to hell and ruined that way, people have these discussions on things and find that they'll agree on things, they'll disagree on things, and they'll create this discourse, which I think we're losing like quicker than ever.
Yeah, people's inability or unwillingness to see somebody else's side of the situation is causing the segregation that has been happening in society over the last 10 years or so to happen faster and faster and faster. And it's a lack of empathy. Mm-hmm. That's the main reason why I said it's a narcissistic trait. It's a narcissistic approach, because if you lack the empathy to think that this person, we might disagree on this subject, but they might be a great person in other respects. If you can't do that, then there's something inherently wrong with you.
In the scale as well, right? Let's say we disagree on a topic. I can look at you as bad for disagreeing on that topic, but I don't see the years and years of things that have happened to you that have allowed you to form the process in your head to come up with that thing. We're both coming from the same place. If we look at the parade from the top of a building, we're both the same people with insecurities, struggles, confidence in areas, shame, guilt, hardships, things like this, families, people we care about, people we dislike. But we've now come to opinion from our experiences. We're no different. We've just had different experiences that led to different views. And if you don't have empathy that this person isn't a dick for thinking liberal or conservative, for being pro men's rights or anti men's rights, they are a byproduct of the things that have happened to them. Like, do you think that all this stuff with this anti-men rhetoric at the moment, that it's becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy? Like, whenever I see, and again, I appreciate this is the snapshot of what we see in the news, which we see the worst stuff. But whenever I see school shootings or people going to Australia with big knives, and it's always men, and I'm sure it isn't, but men maybe gets more publicized. But I never see school shooting happen today. Multi-millionaire Bruce, who owns this Fortune 500 company and has a great wife and kids, decide to go shoot up a school. It's misaligned men that have been pushed out of society, that have been bullied, that have been marginalized. Are we creating more of them? Is the crusade to make women safer and to make people safer from aggressive, toxic masculinity, whatever that means? Are we actually creating more genuinely toxic men?
No, because like the whole toxic masculinity thing, I think is something that again, it's evolved into something absurd, and it's just become
Agree.
just wildly unnecessary. Because what has happened with that, and as soon as I saw the phrase starting to be uttered, I knew exactly what was going to happen with it. I knew it was going to become everything that can be deemed masculine is automatically toxic. And the problem is that one of the worst things that you can do to a man is feminizing, because men feel weak if they feel feminine in any way. And I think one of the biggest issues, like with what you were saying then about men that have been marginalized, they've been bullied, they've been pushed out of society, it's like men that are incels, actual incels, that is what they become. They become reclusive, they become incredibly angry, internalizing a lot of the pain, and then when they do project it online. But we're constantly told men need to talk more, men need to show their emotions more. But the problem is that it's governed through the line of female emotion and female expression of emotion. So women will cry and talk. Men don't cry as often. But we get told it's okay for men to cry. Boys cry too. It's like, yes, they do. But men also get angry. And that's one of our main vessels of expressing emotion and releasing emotion. But at the moment, if a man's ever angry, if a man raises his voice, if he's physical in any way, shape, or form, and I'm not saying violence against women, I'm just talking about being aggressive. That isn't okay. That is a man showing and expressing emotion. And because it's being done so in a medium that a lot of people don't like, it's not accepted. And no, you can show your emotion, but you can't show it like that. Not like that. Do it like this. Talk about your feelings. Men don't need to spend all the time talking about the feelings. Men need to understand the problem that they've got, and they need to find a solution for it so that they can then move past it. If men have a problem, we need to fix it. We don't need to talk about it. That is one of the biggest issues that I think happens at the moment. But the problem is that a lot of different ways that men would be able to deal with their problems isn't being socially accepted through the governance of women. And like therapy, just sitting down and talking doesn't work for the majority of men. And people say men don't talk enough. Well, I think it's like 46% of men that have killed themselves have been to their GP regarding their mental health within the month prior to them killing themselves. 50 odd percent, it's over 50%, 54, 56% again, were actively in therapy or had been in therapy right before they killed themselves. And it's because they're going into these talking therapy settings that work very well for women and they don't work for men because it doesn't give them anything. If a man sat down and spoke to somebody about the problem and left that session with things to do, these tasks are the things that you need to start implementing so that you can make progress and move your life in the right direction, the outcome would be very different. That's what I do. I'm very results focused. When I work with someone, I give people tasks, specific things that they need to do so that they can move the needle in the right direction. It's never just tell me how you're feeling and how do you think you could have dealt with that differently? What do you think would have happened if this? And coming up with hypotheticals, bullshit situations that haven't happened. It's fucking irrelevant. Let's deal with what's actually happening. What can you do to change your circumstances right now? Well, how would you react if this thing happened? I have men come to me that have been in traditional forms of talking therapies where that has been the kind of line of questioning that they've been asked to answer. And I'm like, that there's nothing helpful about that. People say, oh, but it'll show them differently. No, it won't. Show them how to solve the problem that they've got. They want to leave with some form of hope. And you do that by being pragmatic. You do that by saying, listen, if you've got a fire in your house, this is how you put it out.
Mm. I agree. I agree with this on so many levels. And I think you know, don't get me wrong, there is a starting point of men needing to talk, and there is a point, and I'm maybe slightly more feminine in my temperament that I quite like to talk through my issues. But at the end of the day, if I don't have an idea for a solution, this is why I think a lot of journaling falls flat with me, because it's always fixated on the past. It ain't what I'm doing in the future. It's reminiscing on what the problems have happened in the previous time. And this is the thing. Like I'm going through therapy now, and a lot of it is trying to kind of go, right, how do I pick myself up? How do I look at where my next stage of life is? And we're trying the best we can. Yes, there's a talking element to it, and we don't need. I personally don't think we need a degree or understanding of mental health issues to see this. Anyone that's in a long-term relationship knows we have a term called mansplaining, normally given by women when women just want to sit and vent about the problem. They don't want you solving the problem. But no one, that's like a problem. Mansplaining is an issue, right? Don't mansplain to women. What's womansplaining? Talking about an issue without giving you any help to solve it. Never demonized. But it doesn't, it's equally unhelpful.
Yeah, it is. It's women like to feel validated. Mm-hmm. Men like to feel useful.
Yeah.
And I know that given the discourse of this conversation, there's some people that might hear that and think, oh, he's saying that in a bad way. It's not a bad thing at all. Oh. Like, I work with a lot of women. At any given time, probably 60% of my clientele are women. And I love working with women, and I love helping women just the same way that I love helping men, because I just love helping people. But women need a certain level of validation for the things that they're thinking and the things that they're feeling. Men don't. Like, I have some men that will come to me and they'll be like, these are the issues and blah, blah. And I'm like, the way that you feel about it doesn't fucking matter, mate. We just need to solve the problem. Like, as you are right now, are you a man that you are proud of? No. We need to fix that. We don't need to talk about why you're not proud, because we know why you're not proud. Your life isn't running the way that you want it to be. You're not earning the money that you want to earn. You don't look the way that you want to look. You can't communicate the way that you want to. You don't have a position in life, or you don't have any kind of purpose or notoriety or whatever it is that they feel that they need in either a small or a large way. Like, all we need to do is start putting things in place so that we can move you towards feeling proud of who you are. Period.
Yeah.
It changes. I've seen men change more in a week with the right approach than they have in a year with the wrong approach.
I wholeheartedly agree with this. And I'll go from personal example right now, right? This has been the hardest year of my life by a country mile, right? I'm going through a separation with someone I adore that I did not want it to end. And part of this is my fault. There are things in my control, things I'm not. I don't need validation. I know why this fucked up. I know what I'm ashamed of. My biggest problem is uncertainty, because it's like, I need solutions. I need to be able to work out where my next step is. Someone asked me to talk about this. Great. Let's talk about all the things I'm already ashamed of. Now I'm going to leave the session feeling considerably worse. And this is probably why a lot of men the stat you mentioned that have been to therapy and then hurt themselves. You know, it's the reason why I don't think men speaking, even though this is the catalyst, is the first stage, is enough. This is part of my comment with regards to yourself. Like, I'm thankful I've done a number of bouts of therapy. I'm self-aware enough, and I am so shit scared of my own mortality that I don't think anyone needs to worry about me doing anything silly. But there was a point a few weeks ago where, for the first time in my life, I understood why people did. And at that period of time, in that moment, I was so worried about trying to keep my head above water. Business was falling apart. Life was falling apart. I just felt overwhelmed. I couldn't speak to anybody. And that's why I think, yes, and don't get me wrong, when I got out of that moment, the first thing I did is speak to somebody. But I've seen so many people that spoke to people, would have been happy to it, then they had an overwhelming moment and they did something stupid. And if we delayed that, I had someone in a close family friend that committed suicide. If someone, and no one would know, but if someone happened to drop out or reach out and go, do you want a beer at that time, this life could have been very different. And I think this is where it's like, men just talk is part of the conversation. You reaching out to your mates is part of the conversation. You not demonizing people and make men feel bad for the way they naturally feel is part of this conversation. Let's not put men in holes that they need to talk about as often in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that you see quite frequently is I see people talk about the stigma of men speaking out about the problems. But yeah, I've worked with so many men and I've gone, what is the stigma? What is it and where do you see it? and nobody can articulate it. Nobody can answer that question for me. And it feels like it's become such a belief around men's mental health that the stigma around men's mental health.
Because I think I've got a better definition of this. Because people think the stigma of men speaking out is that men shouldn't, and I think we've changed that rhetoric. And yeah, I think we're having more awareness now for men speaking out, and I don't think there is a barrier now to men speaking out about their problems. Where I think the men's mental health stigma actually is that yes, speak, but no one gives a fuck. And I'm talking like, how many people in my last 8 weeks said to me, "Hey, if you ever need a chat, I'm here." And I appreciate that. I'm not knocking that, right? But if I decided to go, I'm going to speak to that person who's offered, they might sit there and listen once, maybe twice. But big problems often take a while. And how many people do you then become the naggy mate? They offered their assistance, but don't actually want to be the person you talk to. They don't actually want to sit and listen to you. I think there's not a stigma of men talking. I think the mental health stigma is that there is still the stigma of men, and to a degree is right, because that is ultimately what needs to happen. But men need to look after themselves and take ownership. So don't talk to me. Just sort your shit out, mate. So the stigma isn't speaking out, is that most people are burnt when they are speaking out. That's my definition. I don't know if that has got further than anyone else has given it, or you've got a great counter argument to shut me down. I'm open to either.
Yeah, I mean, but it's like that. This isn't a situation about being right or wrong. This is about creating as much open conversation and awareness of it so that people can piece it together for themselves, because there will be some people that will listen to this and go, fucking yes, Simon, that is exactly why I don't. But then the next thing that I say, there might be other people that will go, that is the problem. And this is the issue, that it's not linear. Anytime you're dealing with individuals, what is right or wrong for that person is as individualistic as they are, which is why I don't have a set structure for my service. You can't come to me and go, right, how does it work? And I go, oh, right, okay, so we'll do this between week 1 and 3, and then we'll do this, and then we do this, and then we do it, because it doesn't work like that. I treat the individual. I don't treat the condition that they've got, which is another failing with traditional therapies. If you went to a traditional therapist and said, I'm depressed, they would go, right, okay, let me get out the depression playbook. Right, okay, this is how we combat depression. It's like, no, I'm a person that feels depressed. And the playbook for how to solve my depression is based on me, my life, my experiences, my circumstances, and what I react to. Which is why my approach is so individualistic. I could work with 5 people, all for the same issue, all male, and each one of them would have a different approach. But with regards to the whole stigma, part of the problem is male friends want to help their male friends. Male friends don't want to help their male friends that don't want to help themselves. I don't want to sit with my friend over and over and over again and listen to him cry and piss and moan about the same thing. And then the next time I sit down with him and I go, right, mate, what have you done since we last spoke? Like, what's changed? And they go, oh, nothing. That from a male perspective, because the rational, analytical side of the male mind is you're not doing anything to help yourself. I can't keep giving all of my time to you if you're going to do nothing with it but take it. It's no different than a friend coming to you and going, oh, Simon, I'm fucked, mate. Like, such things happen, blah, blah, can I borrow 500 quid? And you go, yeah. And you give him 500 quid. And then a month later, he comes to you and he needs another 500 quid. And you go, right, yeah, that's fine. 500 quid, it's not that big of an ask. Right, cool, there you go. And then a month later, he does the same thing. And then a month later, instead of it being 500 quid, he now needs 700. And then it's a little bit more and a little bit more. And you're like, all right, cool. What have you done in the 6 months that I've been giving you the money to pay your rent? What have you done to fix the financial situation that you're in? Oh, nothing. You'd be like, well, I'm not going to keep paying your bills for you. You need to fix your shit. What are you doing? That's part of the issue from men. Part of the issue of why a lot of men won't speak to women is because of the inherent weakness that is seen in a man from women for crying. And that's something that a lot of women go, no, I'm different. And some women will absolutely be different. But there's an awful lot of women that they will look down on a man once they've seen him in tears, regardless of what they've seen him in tears over. So it's like between a rock and a hard place. You've got the people that are more emotional and are more sympathetic, that would be able to sit with you and listen and validate your feelings, but it comes at a price. And then you've got the other group of people that you can go to. They're not sympathetic at all. They're empathetic, and they want you to solve the problem because they care about you. But they're also not going to give you infinite time to keep playing in about the same issue over and over again whilst doing nothing about it. Because part of the issue of the dynamic structure of talking therapies is longevity. Because if somebody can talk about something and it pacifies the emotion that surrounds those issues for a week or two, and then by the time the next session comes around, they've started to rise to the surface, and then you talk about it and it suppresses it. Well, you get this, don't you? And it just follows that wave system. Because if they give you what's needed so that you can get rid of it, it goes down and it stays down because it stays controlled or the problem's gone. But that means that that client is now not going to come back.
How much of that do you think is deliberate? How much do you think that's deliberate, and how much do you think that is people not having the tools, not being taught the tools, or they've been given a playbook that maybe is outdated?
Well, look, think about it like that. Who hasn't been given the tools? The therapist. Okay. Whose responsibility is it to give the therapist the tools? The therapist. If you care about helping people, take it upon yourself to fucking learn. You know, it's like when people say, oh, schools, they don't teach you about this and they don't teach you about that and the other. Well, it's not a school's responsibility to teach you absolutely everything that you might need to know through every different stage of your life. You are your own individual. You need to take it upon yourself to learn those skills, just like I have. I wasn't taught the things that I know. I've learned the things that I know through diligent, obsessive focus on becoming the best whatever I am for what people need. You know, it's not all courses and guidance from other people. It's been a lot of trial and error. It's been a lot of, right, that works really, really well. That doesn't. Let's do less of that and let's do more of this. But while I'm doing more of this, how can I make it even better? That it's been a long, long process. I've been coaching for almost 20 years now. It's been a long process of that. You know, and that's been on me. For me, it's look at depression. You go to your GP. You go to your GP and you say to him, "This is the way that I've been feeling. These are the circumstances of my life." I can guarantee that the first thing you'll do is you'll go, "Right, I'm going to write you a prescription for citalopram or some bullshit." Like, all right, cool. How does that solve the problems that are causing the way that I feel? By the way, it doesn't. But it gets them money. And how many times do you go to a drug dealer and the drug dealer sits you down and goes, "Mate, is everything all right? Because you've been buying a lot of drugs off me recently and I don't think it's good for you." They don't. They just give you whatever you can pay for. Because that's what drug dealers do. They do it because they make fucking money. You know, and when somebody that they've been given a lot of drugs to suddenly stops buying, they don't go, "Oh, he must be going to somebody else." They probably think, "Oh, he's probably dead." Anyway, we'll replace him with somebody else. That might just be me being overly cynical, but when you've worked with as many people as I have over such an extended period of time that have been failed over and over and over and over again, it's kind of hard to not be cynical about the whole system.
Yes, I totally agree, and I also think this is where awareness has a drawback, because with social media now, I did a reel the other day saying I hate the fact that when I say I have to have ADHD, I have to clarify the medicated kind, not the self-diagnosed Instagram kind. And the great side about awareness is that people like myself, who was adult diagnosed with ADHD, wondered all my life, but never even knew what it was, never even knew what the symptoms was. And then I heard, I'm like, oh, maybe I should go to a doctor and see. So many people go, got that, and they're just procrastinating. They've just let social media take over their life. And this rise in awareness, while good, also makes people create victimhood, create blame that's external to them. I have medication I forget to take about my ADHD. It helps, but it doesn't stop me procrastinating. It doesn't mean I have to not have to learn strategies to focus. It doesn't take the work off me. But I think people are looking for that these days because social media, like you said, you've done that. We said before you came on air, you've done 4 odd years before you even charged a single penny for life coaching. It was a bolt on to your service. I've done 14 years of PT before I went online and started teaching coaches. Yet people now are like, I'm struggling. I'm not good enough. Where's the thing? What is the get rich quick 10 grand a month scene rather than actually learning how to help someone lose body fat? What's the bit of advice I can give as a 19-year-old life coach when I don't have any experience? Do you think the awareness of mental health is a double-edged sword?
100%.
Hmm.
100%. Because it's rife with whataboutism as well. People understand that attention is one of the most valuable currencies that is available at the moment. And as a currency, just like all currencies, it's finite. So as soon as one thing is given attention, there's somebody else going, yeah, but what about? And it's people vying for the attention all the time. Anytime you talk about men's mental health, I know I've this. Anytime I talk about men's mental health, I always have a woman that goes, yeah, but what about women that experience this? So like before I actually set up the Male Support Network, one of my friends, Victor, replied to a Q&A box because he and I had just lost a mutual friend to suicide. And he was like, what needs to be done? Like, what can be done? Because there isn't enough at the moment. And I replied to it, and it was 3 stories long. Now, sometimes my stories, if I'm on one, it's top to bottom, and it's little text, right? And I know most people see it and think, well, fucking hell, I'm going to read that. And I'm like, yeah, sorry about that, but there was a lot to put on. I didn't want it to be like 11 stories long.
Yeah.
And I said in it that, yeah, he's 100% correct. There's nowhere near enough care, consideration, actual active work being done to try to help men. So in light of that, I'm going to set something up. And that was kind of the birth point of the Male Support Network. That question came, right. So the catalyst for it was my friend Johnny, who I've been friends with since primary school. He took his life. And then it was that triggered Victor to ask the question. And then that's where the MSN came from. And I posted that, and I shit you not, the stories had been up for 10 minutes. And a woman replied to me and said, why don't you set up a women's mental health support company? Because women deal with this, women deal with that at the hands of men, and men perpetuate all the problems that women experience and blah, blah, blah. And I literally just replied, set it up your fucking self if you care that much.
Mm-hmm.
Because who the fuck are you to slide into my DMs and tell me that what I want to do and to support men isn't a worthy enough cause because women have it rough too? Mm-hmm. Because yes, women have it rough, but they don't have it anywhere near as bad as men. They just don't.
And even if you believe they do, there are plenty of support networks like that already. And there are probably women who are struggling with these issues that have personal experience setting these things up. You setting up a men's support network does not invalidate the need or the other female support networks. It's like saying, I run a personal training company. Well, why don't you set up an investment bank? Well, because other people are doing the investment bank. It doesn't invalidate my company. I sell shoes. Well, why don't you sell dresses? Because I don't. Like, it doesn't mean that that's not a valid cause. It's just I just don't do that, and that's fine. Other people can do that.
Yeah, but that's it. That is very much like that is the problem. It's always met with, yeah, but what about? And I don't give a fuck about you. What about? If you care about that so much, then you go and care about that and leave me to care about this, and then both of those things are being cared about.
Yes.
It just makes sense to me because it's things like domestic violence, right? Domestic abuse. Anytime it comes up, even if it's in the media, and I've seen evidence of this. I don't know if you follow him. Do you follow the Tin Man?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
George, I can't remember his surname, but what a fucking wonderful man he is.
Agreed.
He's just incredible. Any man listening to, you know what? Any woman listening to this as well, go on Instagram and follow the Tin Men. One of the best pages that you will ever come across if you care about male mental health and men's struggles and a genuine.
Or if you don't, you think you've gone into a bias. Follow it.
Yeah. That's a fantastic addition, that Simon. But domestic violence, domestic abuse comes up, and it's always the mental picture is always a man hitting a woman. But a third of victims of domestic violence are men. And at the moment in the UK, of the 5,683 refuge beds that there are, 56 of them are for men.
Mm.
So there's thousands and thousands of them, and there isn't even 100 available for men. So you've got 33% of people that experience domestic abuse are men, and just over 1% of the available refuge beds are for men. So that is the kind of wild disparity that is experienced in certain situations for men. Other things like a man is 88% more likely to be convicted of a crime than a woman is under very similar circumstances. And men on average get a prison sentence that is up to, I think it's 63% longer than what women experience for this same crime. Yeah, it's just, I mean, there's so many things that actually make apparent just how huge the disparity between situations are. 78% of all suicides are men. 79% of all homeless people are men. 87% of all homeless deaths are men. But these are statistics that people don't know about. And if they do see them, they just go, yeah, but there's other things to focus on.
Yeah, and it's the thing about that I always find really interesting is that like social justice is only for convenient issues. I alluded to it earlier, where women who talk about the gender pay gap,
the thing that doesn't exist.
The thing it doesn't exist, right? What I call the mothering pay gap and the negotiation pay gap. If it does exist, I think there may be some sectors where there is a boys' club promotion strategy. And if you fought for that, I go, let's listen to that. But it's not. It's that men and women are paid differently for the same role. No, they're not. If that's the case, every big business would just hire women and save themselves a ton of fucking money. But everyone's talking about the amount of not enough female CEOs. But yes, okay, most CEOs are men. Most homeless people are men. Most people in prison are men. Most bin men are men. Aren't we going to be fighting for more women being dustbin men? And doing the horrible jobs, emptying the sewers? No, because the oil rigs. Because you don't want to do those jobs.
It's like 94% of deaths in the workplace are men. Are we going to even that out?
I remember watching the Euros, when the women got to the final. I saw so many things about women are getting through to the Euro final and they're not getting paid anywhere near as much as the men. Right. I went and go watch that game. I'm walking through London. I'm a bit late. Loads of women on the street. No men on the street. Why? Because men are watching the game. All these women that are trying to support and say, well, they should be paid more. Go and watch the game, because if you watch the game, there'll be more ad revenue.
Yeah, but no, this is the problem, though, Simon. This is the problem. Women wake up more of a percentage of society, but within women's sport, there is a problem, which is the amount that they get paid, and it's an external problem to the women, and it's a problem that men in society have to fix. Why don't men want to watch women's football? Why should we? If men want to watch men play football and they don't want to watch women play football, why is that a bad thing?
And I also don't think it makes it sexist. I think, like, if for me, like, if let's say I was a football fan, I wanted to be Cristiano Ronaldo growing up. When I watched wrestling, I wanted to be Triple H, right? I'm in a big pro wrestling fan. I'm more into men's wrestling match than female wrestling. I like female wrestling, but I never wanted to be Charlotte Flair. I never wanted to be Trish Stratus, because I could never be. I couldn't relate to it. Men liking men's sport is not a sexist thing. Men liking men's sport is because they are role models for them to look up to, in the same way that women liking women's sport is because they're role models that they could look up to. And I think there is an awareness thing, which is evening now, and I think but now it's like, if you want this to change, they are paid a higher cut of the World Cup kitty, women in general, but the kitty is tiny. Yeah, and blokes are like 7%.
Here's another really interesting statistic that I saw earlier this year. The entirety of women's sport in the UK is estimated to reach a total value of £1 billion by 2030. It'll become a £1 billion industry by 2030. That's all of women's sports: gymnastics, tennis, football, everything, right? The Premier League generates about $7 billion, £7 billion per year. So one league of men's football generates way, way, way more than all of women's sport. We could say, oh, it's because men support men more. All right, cool. There's more women than men. Support women. Watch the games. Buy the pay-per-view. Watch it on your phone. Loads of men that I know will pay for a boxing match or something and they'll sit there and they'll watch it on the phone. Watch it on an iPad. They'll watch it on a TV. Some of them will watch it in the pub. It doesn't matter. We will watch it wherever we are, because if you're fully invested in something, you will watch it. You will stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning to watch the most recent UFC event. But that level of support for women doesn't come from women. It's always seen as, well, men can do it. Why? I don't want to. I'll never do it. I'll never watch women's sport because I don't give a shit about sport, to be perfectly honest. I enjoy watching the UFC now and then, but other than that, I can't be bothered. I don't care. I really don't. It's not a sexist thing because I don't care who's playing. Like I couldn't name more than 5 professional football players at the moment, I reckon. Like I'm honestly, I'm not in it. I don't care.
Me neither. It's the reason why I don't watch women's football is because I don't like football, not because I don't like women. You know, like that is the rhetoric. It's like this. It becomes this sort of like aggression again of this. We're finding a reason to create an argument over something there's not an argument about. So, like, we spoke about role models earlier on. To start to close this off, like, where do men now go and find role models? Like, genuine role models that are going to help them?
The problem is that we all find role models through the same mechanism. We find role models in people that exhibit the life and behaviors that we would be proud to have ourselves. So if you see someone that has great utility to their family, to their friends, to society overall, if that's something that you find great, cool, inspiring, whatever, that's going to be a role model for you. You know, if you see someone that has attention, awareness, notoriety, fame, and that's what you want, that is who's going to be a role model for you for any number of reasons. People like people that are either like them or are how they want to be. You can't dictate who people see as a role model. You can't tell somebody what to like. It's no different than anything else. It's no different than a sexual preference. You can't tell someone that it is okay to like that, but it's not okay to like that. It's okay to have that person as a role model, but it's not okay to have that person as a role model. It doesn't work like that.
Do you know that's why it's so dangerous to start removing role models of a certain subsection, like men in this example at the moment? Because we can't really choose who our role models are, so we deprive people on it. They don't even know where to turn. Rather than having an abundance of them, they'll find somebody to latch onto.
Yeah, it ends up being the fewer that you feel that you have, the more abstract the options become. So they become to the extremes. Like Andrew Tate, he's the extreme of what he is.
Yeah.
You know, like you will find other people that will be similar to him in ways, but there'll be a toned down version. They'll be more moderate in their approach to certain things. They'll be more moderate to their approach to business, to finances, to dating, to just life in general. So you've got to find the people that you align with. The person, like when I said earlier, are you a man that you're proud of? Now, if you as a man feel that you are not proud of yourself, and you feel that if you had kids, your children wouldn't be proud of you being their dad, but then you see a man and you think, I'd be proud to be like him. It doesn't necessarily mean that you want to be him or that is a good way to live life. It's just that there is something about him that he has that you don't.
A side question to that, and because I can't believe we haven't spoken about it already. If people are feeling like there are less role models, are you saying the people are becoming these little bubbles of subsections of tribalism? Is that why loneliness is on the rise in men? Like the amount of men that feel they have close friends is on average is now 0. And if that's the case, if that's the average, and I've certainly felt this in the last sort of 6 months, moving to work online and things falling apart on myself personally. How does somebody go about creating a social connection? Because it's harder as an adult, because you now have these opinions and views and differences between people, whereas at uni you will just happen to be in the same place and you're in a bar, whereas now we've now got a minefield to work through before we get in front of anybody.
Yeah, it's difficult, but it's also not impossible, because we're in a position where you can connect with people easier now than you ever have before.
Yeah.
You know, it was, I mean, if you work in an environment where there are other people, then you can connect with people. But I think part of the issue is that people navigate their life by this narrative of, if I disagree with that person on one thing, I cannot be friends with them. I cannot align myself with. I can't possibly align myself with them because they don't have the Palestinian flag in their bio on Instagram. And like, fuck me, like, let people be who they are, for fuck's sake. You know, like, if you align with somebody on 8 out of 10 things, then fucking ignore the 2 things that you don't align on. Just don't talk about them. They're not your boyfriend or your girlfriend. You know, like, your core values don't need to align completely with a friend in the same way that they do with a partner. You know, I personally believe that is one of the biggest issues. People just, they set and hold other people to expectations and standards that they refuse to hold themselves to. And if they were to be held to those same standards, they would find it unfair.
Yeah, I also think as what you alluded to there is that it's easier to connect with people. Social media is this great thing. I alluded to my feeling of loneliness since my separation, and while yes, there is a disadvantage of working from home and not having a social connections around my local area in the same way, but it doesn't mean at any point do I not take for granted or not appreciate the fact that I've got so many people that I've connected with that I wouldn't have connected with if it wasn't for social media. We wouldn't be having this conversation. We wouldn't know who each other were without having social media, and we demonize it, and some point rightly so. So we got cancelled midstream there for a second. Clearly the Illuminati are after us.
That's it. Matrix attack.
But I think, as I was saying, yeah, I think the like social media is we there's some negatives to it, but it allows us to create connections. If we reframe how we think about social media and use it to create connections, you'll be amazed how quickly you can create opportunity. And we just don't see that because we want to remove ourselves from it.
Yeah. So, like, for me, the primary focus of the Male Support Network, for me, just to shamelessly plug it, is to create a network for men to find the support that they actually need, to create a space where men can actually communicate in the way that they want to communicate. Like, my ideal for, like, future view of it is a community that, if a man is part of it and he needs advice on divorce, there will be people in there that can help him. If he needs help with parenting, child custody, etc., there will be people in it. If he needs a solicitor, there will be solicitors in it. You know, if they need a therapist, etc., there will be a myriad of different types of therapists that are part of the community. Because even if you're a therapist, you still need help in life in different areas. If you're a solicitor, you still need help in life in different areas. I want to create a community so that every different type of man is in that environment. Oh, lads, I've got a fucking problem with my car. A couple of lads that are in the group, the mechanics. What's going on, mate? Oh, it's such a thing. Try this. Mint, it's worked amazing. You know, like, so that is what I want. I want a network that actually works, because once I've grown it to a certain size, I'm then going to start having in-person events where it might be that we get together and there'll be a couple of speakers and we'll have specific topics that we'll go through. And then that'll be the first half of the day. And then the second half of the day, we'll go and get some food. We'll go and throw fucking axes or go paintballing, or we'll do something that is fun, that lads can get together and we can be lads. You know, and we can talk about whatever we want to talk about. That's the purpose of it.
So, last couple of closing questions then before we finish. If you could change one thing to help men's mental health, what would it be? It could be getting rid of something, or it could be adding something.
To be honest, I don't think it would be taking things away. I would just want more men to just understand, if you've got a problem, seek the solution. Imagine it's like Predator, right? You're Arnold Schwarzenegger. Your primary problem is the fact that you're being hunted by the Predator. So what's the solution? Do you lie down and die? Do you try and talk to it? Do you try and talk to somebody else about the problem? No. You adapt and you learn as much as you can so that you can figure out what the solution is, so that you can kill the problem. That is the way that men need to approach their mental health. You need to figure out what the core of your problem is and then do everything that you can possibly do to get rid of that problem. Speaking to a professional might be part of that. Speaking to your friends, but don't just go to your friends and say, can we talk? It needs to be like, Gav, I'm going through some shit right now and I want to fix it, but I don't know where to start. Like, can we sit down and just have a chat? See if you can come up with something different. Because I only know what I know. You said earlier, we only know what we know. So you get to a point, like relevant to the post that I put on last night, you might have spent a lot of time mulling over the problem that you've got and thinking, I've thought of everything. No, you've thought of everything that you can think of. You've not thought of everything. Because I've had people come to me for coaching and they've said, I've tried everything. I'm like, no, you've not. If you tried everything, you would have solved the problem. And the first thing that I suggest, they go, oh, I never thought of that. But that's it. Like, there's so many things that could be the resolve to the problem that you've got that you can't even conceptualize. So if you're going to reach out with purpose. Don't just reach out to talk. Don't just reach out because you need a shoulder to cry on. It's fine to cry whilst talking about your problem. Cry whilst you're talking about the solutions to the problem. Like, cry, but carry on. Keep doing the work that needs to be done.
Yeah. So I have a closing question I ask everybody, because I think it's in the social media world, everything's a highlight reel, and we don't see the hardships and the mistakes that people go through. So name me one thing you've changed your mind on.
Oh God, there's loads of things that I've changed my mind on over the years. I can't even pinpoint something. That is a great question though, because that is an inherent issue with a lot of people. I've said more times than I can remember. If you view life the same now in your mid-30s as you did when you were in your mid-20s, you're not living life right, because you're not evolving. You're not challenging yourself enough. All your belief systems are staying the same.
I think what you think of something, it sums up what we've been talking about. Paul Saladino, the carnival guy, recently came out and said why he doesn't do carnival anymore, right? And I saluted it. I think he had a lot of issues. He went me and he goes, this helped me. Here's my blood work. And now he's refined his thinking. I think that's to be saluted. And yet there is people now criticizing, going, oh, he's a hypocrite. And I'm like, no, he's showing development. And this is the tribes that we've spoken about this whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, that for me, that shows genuine growth as a person, to be able to go, you know what? I was wrong. Or even if it's not that he was wrong, it's like, at the time, that was exactly what I needed, but I don't need that now. I need something different. There's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But again, that's a situation where people don't make space, because people are so scared of failure and being wrong that they will fight it as if it's being done to them by somebody else that is openly acknowledging the fact that they were wrong about something. It's bizarre, because I love that. I like, if somebody goes, this is what I believed and I now believe different, I'm like, good for you. Like, you've got balls between your legs. You can actually step up and go, I'm changing my mind because of X, Y. That's the way that scientific people should be. Like, if somebody could provide me with absolutely irrefutable evidence that God was real, I would believe in God. Yeah. Because there's irrefutable evidence. I wouldn't continue my belief system going, no, it's not. It's not. It's wrong. If you show me irrefutable evidence, I will go, yeah, cool. That's what it is. Because that's just the way that scientific minds work. But until someone can show me irrefutable evidence that God is real, I will continue to believe in what I believe.
Love that. So I've really enjoyed this. I haven't had a conversation that's gone quite this long in a while for good reason. So if people have gotten to the end of this, they're clearly into what you're saying. So where can people find you, find the Men's Support Network? Because I'll definitely be checking that out. Run me through where people can find you.
So on Instagram, I am the Honest Life Coach. My page on TikTok is the Honest Life Coach as well, but it's the same content. As far as the Male Support Network, you find that on School, which is a platform that just houses the whole thing. And I've also gotten School as well.
Brilliant, man. Mate, I've generally enjoyed this. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Self-Made Podcast. If you're like me and like binge watching podcast episodes, click here to watch our latest episode. Or if you want to stay in touch and find out when the next episode goes live, click here to subscribe to the channel.